Hello everyone, Dr. Alan Mandell. Here, welcome back to my channel, Science of Healing. When it comes to the human body, few topics are surrounded by more myths, confusion, and unnecessary anxiety than this one. How deep is the vagina? Many people imagine it as a fixed tunnel with a strict measurement, but science tells a very different story. The truth is far more fascinating and far more intelligent than popular belief. The vagina is not a rigid structure. It is a muscular, elastic, collapsible canal designed by nature for flexibility, adaptation, and function. At rest, the average vaginal canal is approximately 7 to 10 centimeters long. You have been told a simple idea your entire life, that the human body comes in fixed measurements like a product with a label, something that can be reduced to a number, a chart, or a comparison. But when we step into real human anatomy, especially the female reproductive system, science begins to dismantle that illusion piece by piece. The vagina is not a fixed tube with a permanent size. It is not a rigid anatomical tunnel waiting to be measured like a pipe. And this is where most of the misunderstanding begins, because the human brain naturally tries to simplify what it cannot easily visualize. In reality, the vagina is a dynamic, muscular, and highly elastic organ made of layers of smooth muscle and mucosal tissue. And like all intelligent biological systems, it is designed for adaptation, not limitation. Medical research consistently describes the vagina as a potential space, and that phrase alone changes everything, because a potential space is not something that exists in one constant shape. It is something that changes form depending on physiological state. At rest, the vaginal walls are not stretched open. They are gently collapsed, like soft folds of fabric resting together. This is an energy-efficient, protective configuration because the body is always seeking balance, preservation, and minimal exposure when no active function is required. But here is where the science becomes truly fascinating. The vaginal walls are composed of smooth muscle fibers that respond automatically to the autonomic nervous system, the same system that controls your heartbeat, your breathing, and your digestion without conscious effort. This means vaginal structure is not controlled by willpower or fixed rigidity. It is controlled by internal physiological conditions such as blood flow, hormonal signaling, and neural relaxation. When researchers study pelvic anatomy through imaging and clinical observation, they consistently find that vaginal length and shape vary significantly between individuals and even within the same individual at different times. This is not randomness. This is biological intelligence. The body is not static. It is responsive. And yet many people grow up believing in the myth of a fixed, average size, as if human anatomy could be standardized like a manufactured object. But in clinical medicine, that concept does not hold up under scrutiny. Even in urology and gynecology textbooks, measurements are presented as ranges, not absolutes, because variation is the rule, not the exception. The vaginal canal is influenced by surrounding structures as well. The pelvic floor muscles, the bladder, the rectum, and even posture all subtly affect its shape and functional length. This is why two healthy individuals can have completely different anatomical measurements and still be considered perfectly normal in medical terms. And yet, perhaps the most misunderstood aspect is this: the vagina is not meant to be measured in a single fixed state because it is not designed to exist in a single fixed state. It is a living tissue system that responds to hormonal cycles. Estrogen levels directly influence tissue elasticity and thickness. During different phases of the menstrual cycle, the vaginal lining changes in hydration, sensitivity, and resilience. This is not weakness or inconsistency. This is adaptation at a cellular level. Even stress plays a measurable role. Chronic stress activates the sympathetic nervous system, which can increase muscular tension throughout the pelvic region, while relaxation and parasympathetic activation allow smoother muscle relaxation and improved blood flow. This is why modern pelvic health research increasingly focuses not just on anatomy, but on neuromuscular regulation, because the vagina is not isolated from the mind or body. It is part of a fully integrated system. And here is where an important emotional truth emerges. Many fears and misconceptions about vaginal size come from treating the body like it is supposed to conform to a single standard. But biological reality does not work that way. Nature does not design for uniformity. It designs for function and survival. The elasticity of vaginal tissue is one of the most advanced adaptations in human biology. It allows for multiple physiological roles without structural damage, and then returns to baseline without permanent alteration. This ability is driven by collagen fibers, elastin proteins, and vascular responsiveness, all of which work together like a living hydraulic system. But perhaps the most overlooked scientific fact is this: resting anatomy is not a measurement of capacity, it is a state of conservation, meaning the body is not smaller or tighter at rest in a pathological sense. It is simply in a protective mode, conserving energy and maintaining internal balance. When medical professionals explain this, they often emphasize that vaginal structure is not evaluated by how it looks at rest, but by how it functions across different physiological states. And function, not static appearance, is what defines health. This is where misinformation becomes harmful, because when people interpret resting anatomy as a fixed size, they misunderstand the entire design principle of the human body. And once that misunderstanding forms, it can lead to unnecessary anxiety, false comparisons, and completely unrealistic expectations about what is normal. But scientifically speaking, normal is not a single measurement. Normal is a range of functional adaptability, and the vagina is one of the clearest examples of that principle in the human body. Every layer of its structure is designed for resilience, every fiber for flexibility, every response system for adaptation. It is not a passive structure. It is an active, intelligent biological environment constantly responding to internal and external conditions. And when you finally understand that, the entire idea of a fixed vaginal size begins to dissolve. What remains is something far more accurate and far more powerful. A living system designed not for comparison, but for function, protection, and adaptability across a lifetime of changing physiology. What most people never realize is that the human body does not switch on sexuality as a fixed mechanical response, but instead undergoes a deeply coordinated physiological transformation that involves the nervous system, vascular system, endocrine system, and muscular system, all working in harmony. And nowhere is this more beautifully demonstrated than in the vaginal response to arousal, which is not about size at all, but about intelligent adaptability. When scientists study sexual physiology, they often emphasize that the vagina is a highly responsive organ, meaning it does not remain static even for a single moment of life, because it is continuously influenced by blood flow, hormone fluctuations, and neural signaling that determine its state from rest to full functional activation. At baseline, the vaginal canal is in a collapsed, relaxed configuration, not because it is small or limited, but because the body conserves energy and maintains protective tone when no reproductive or sexual activity is occurring, and this resting state is actually a sign of healthy neuromuscular control, not restriction or deficiency. But when arousal begins, something extraordinary happens that modern medical imaging has helped us understand in far greater detail than ever before. And it begins not with physical expansion, but with the nervous system itself. The parasympathetic nervous system activates, shifting the body into a state of relaxation while blood vessels in the pelvic region begin to dilate, increasing circulation dramatically, and this vascular response is not random. It is driven by nitric oxide signaling, the same molecular pathway that regulates cardiovascular health and tissue oxygenation throughout the body. As blood flow increases, the vaginal tissues begin to engorge, meaning they become more hydrated, more oxygenated, and more flexible at a microscopic level, which allows the muscular walls to relax and elongate naturally without force or strain. This process is often referred to in medical literature as vaginal lengthening or the tenting effect, and it is one of the most important physiological changes in the entire female reproductive system because it directly demonstrates that vaginal depth is not fixed, but dynamically responsive to internal conditions. During this phase, the uterus itself subtly shifts upward in the pelvic cavity, a movement that contributes to increased vaginal length. And this is not a mechanical stretch like pulling fabric, but a coordinated muscular adjustment controlled by pelvic floor relaxation and ligament response. At the same time, the vaginal canal changes its shape from a collapsed structure into a more open, expanded passageway, not because it is being forced, but because the smooth muscle fibers are designed to separate and reorganize when stimulated by arousal signals. Scientific studies using ultrasound imaging have confirmed that vaginal length can increase significantly during arousal compared to its resting state, and this variation is entirely normal, showing that the organ is designed for functional flexibility rather than fixed dimensions. Even more fascinating is the role of the pelvic floor muscles, which act like a dynamic support system that can either maintain tone or release tension depending on neurological input. And during arousal, these muscles naturally relax to allow expansion, which is the opposite of what many people assume. This relaxation is not weakness, it is precision control because the body is ensuring that internal structures can adapt without resistance or discomfort, creating a state of optimal readiness for function. Meanwhile, vaginal lubrication increases through transudation, a process where fluid passes through the vaginal walls due to increased blood flow pressure. And this is another example of how circulation directly affects tissue behavior, reducing friction and protecting delicate mucosal surfaces. What is truly remarkable is that all of these changes occur without conscious effort, without voluntary control, and without any mechanical intervention, which means the entire process is governed by automatic biological intelligence that has evolved over millions of years. This is why modern urology and gynecology do not describe vaginal function in terms of rigid size, but instead in terms of responsiveness, elasticity, and adaptability, because these are the true markers of healthy tissue behavior. And yet, despite this well-documented science, many misconceptions persist in popular culture, where the body is often misunderstood as being fixed in shape, leading to unnecessary anxiety and completely inaccurate comparisons that have no basis in medical reality. The truth is, there is no single expanded size or standard depth that defines arousal, because every individual's physiological response is influenced by hormonal levels, emotional state, cardiovascular health, and even breathing patterns, all of which modulate how the nervous system regulates pelvic circulation and muscular relaxation. Even respiration plays a subtle but important role because deep, slow breathing activates the parasympathetic system, enhancing relaxation and blood flow, while shallow breathing can increase tension and reduce tissue responsiveness, showing how interconnected the entire body truly is. From a biological perspective, the vaginal response to arousal is one of the most advanced examples of functional transformation in human anatomy because it demonstrates reversible structural change without damage, without wear, and without loss of integrity over time. This is fundamentally different from mechanical systems because biological systems are designed for restoration, not static existence, meaning they return to baseline after activity without degradation when healthy conditions are maintained. And this returning to baseline is just as important as expansion itself because it proves that the body is not being permanently altered by temporary states, but is instead cycling through phases of readiness, function, and rest in a continuous loop of balance. When you understand this process deeply, it becomes clear that vaginal depth during arousal is not something that is created or forced, but something that emerges naturally from internal coordination, like a symphony of physiological systems responding in perfect timing. And perhaps the most powerful realization is this: the body does not need to be changed to function correctly. It only needs to be understood. Because what appears externally as expansion is internally a complex and intelligent process of relaxation, blood flow optimization, muscular coordination, and neurological signaling that ensures the body operates exactly as it was designed to. And in that understanding, the entire concept of fixed size disappears completely, replaced by something far more accurate, far more scientific, and far more respectful of human biology. A system not built for measurement, but built for adaptation, responsiveness, and life itself. There's a truth about human health that most people only learn far too late in life, and it is this: the body does not operate in isolated parts. It operates as one deeply interconnected system where circulation, hormones, muscles, nerves, and even emotions continuously influence one another in ways science is only beginning to fully appreciate. And when it comes to pelvic and vaginal health, perhaps the most surprising discovery from modern medical research is that structure matters far less than function, and function is governed far more by lifestyle than by any fixed anatomical idea of size or shape. One of the most important systems involved here is circulation, because every living tissue in the body depends on oxygen-rich blood flow, and the pelvic region is no exception. When blood flow is strong and consistent, tissues remain well-nourished, elastic, and responsive, but when circulation is reduced due to sedentary behavior, chronic stress, or poor metabolic health, even the most resilient tissues begin to lose optimal function over time. This is why researchers studying pelvic floor health consistently find a strong connection between cardiovascular fitness and pelvic tissue vitality, because what happens in the heart and blood vessels is directly reflected in reproductive and muscular health. Even something as simple as walking daily has measurable effects on microcirculation, improving oxygen delivery to pelvic structures and supporting the smooth muscle function that maintains healthy tone and responsiveness. But circulation is only one piece of the story. The pelvic floor muscles form a complex supportive sling at the base of the pelvis, and these muscles are unique because they are both voluntary and involuntary in function, meaning they can be consciously trained, but are also constantly influenced by posture, breathing, and nervous system state. When these muscles are strong and balanced, they provide stability, support organ positioning, and contribute to overall pelvic comfort. But when they are chronically tight due to stress or weak due to inactivity, the entire system can become imbalanced, leading to sensations of discomfort or dysfunction that have nothing to do with anatomy itself. And here is where modern physical therapy research becomes extremely important. Studies in pelvic rehabilitation show that both weakness and excessive tension in pelvic muscles can create problems, meaning the goal is not simply strength, but optimal coordination, flexibility, and relaxation when needed. This is where breathing becomes unexpectedly powerful. Deep diaphragmatic breathing has been shown in clinical studies to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for rest, repair, and tissue recovery. When this system is active, pelvic muscles naturally relax, blood vessels dilate, and oxygen delivery improves throughout the entire lower body. In contrast, chronic stress keeps the sympathetic nervous system dominant, which increases muscular tension, restricts blood flow, and can create a persistent state of pelvic tightness that affects comfort and function over time. This is not psychological, it is physiological. Stress literally changes how blood moves through the body and how muscles maintain tone. And this is why two people with identical anatomy can experience completely different sensations, not because of structural differences, but because of differences in nervous system regulation. Now consider hydration. Water is not just a general health recommendation, it is a cellular requirement for tissue elasticity. Every mucosal surface in the body, including vaginal tissue, depends on adequate hydration to maintain flexibility, lubrication, and resilience. Even mild dehydration can reduce tissue pliability and alter how muscles and connective tissue respond to normal physiological stimuli. And yet, hydration is often overlooked in discussions about reproductive health, even though it is one of the simplest and most effective supportive factors. Nutrition also plays a deeply underestimated role. Anti-inflammatory foods rich in antioxidants help reduce oxidative stress at the cellular level, which supports healthy tissue aging and maintains vascular integrity. Omega-3 fatty acids found in foods like nuts and seeds contribute to cellular membrane fluidity, which is essential for maintaining flexible and responsive tissue structures. Meanwhile, excessive consumption of ultra-processed foods has been linked in research to increased systemic inflammation, which can indirectly affect vascular health, hormone balance, and tissue recovery. Then there is hormonal balance, one of the most powerful regulators of pelvic health. Estrogen in particular plays a critical role in maintaining vaginal tissue thickness, moisture levels, and elasticity. When estrogen levels are optimal, tissues remain well lubricated and resilient. But when levels decline, such as during certain life stages or due to chronic stress, tissues can become drier and less flexible, which again is not a structural problem, but a hormonal one. This is why pelvic health cannot be separated from overall endocrine health, because hormones act like chemical messengers that continuously regulate tissue behavior throughout the body. And perhaps one of the most overlooked factors of all is movement. The human body is not designed for prolonged stillness. Sedentary behavior reduces lymphatic drainage, slows circulation, and weakens muscular coordination over time, especially in the pelvic region where muscles are deeply connected to posture and core stability. Even small, consistent movements throughout the day, standing, stretching, walking, activate muscle pumps that support blood and lymph flow, helping maintain healthy tissue environments. What emerges from all of this scientific understanding is a simple but powerful truth. Pelvic health is not controlled by one single factor. It is the result of a living ecosystem inside the body where circulation, nervous system balance, muscle tone, hydration, nutrition, and hormones all interact continuously. There is no single fix, no single measurement, and no single definition of normal that applies universally. Instead, there is only function. And function depends on how well the entire system is supported in daily life. This is why modern medicine increasingly focuses not on isolated anatomy, but on holistic physiological balance, because the body does not heal or maintain itself in parts. It does so as a whole integrated network. And when that network is supported through simple daily habits like movement, hydration, nutrient-rich foods, stress management, and breathing awareness, the results are not just physical. They are functional, neurological, and deeply restorative at the level of cellular health. Because ultimately, the body is not asking to be measured or compared. It is asking to be supported, understood, and kept in balance. And when that happens, every system, including the most misunderstood ones, begins to function exactly as nature designed, with quiet intelligence, resilience, and remarkable adaptability.